The big test is coming. Maybe it's the SAT, the GRE, or even the MCAT. For many students, this means long nights filled with flashcards and practice drills. The common approach is to memorize as many facts and formulas as possible. You go through one chapter, drill the questions, and then move on to the next. This method feels productive because you are always busy. You are constantly reading and answering questions. It seems like the most direct path to a good score. But is it really the best way to prepare for these challenging exams? These tests are designed to measure more than just your memory. They want to see how you think. The problem with this traditional method is that it treats learning like filling a bucket. Each fact is a drop of water and you hope to fill the bucket to the brim by test day. However, this approach often leads to burnout and anxiety. The information you memorize for one chapter can feel completely separate from the next. This creates isolated islands of knowledge in your mind. When you face a complex question on the exam that combines ideas from different topics, it becomes difficult to build a bridge between them. Rote memorization doesn't prepare you for that kind of flexible, critical thinking. It is a fragile way to learn. These major exams are not simply about what you know, they are about how you use what you know. The test makers are experts at creating questions that require you to connect different concepts. They want to see if you can apply a mathematical principle to a science passage or use your vocabulary skills to understand a complex argument. Simply drilling isolated problems won't build this skill. You might be able to solve a specific type of algebra problem perfectly, but what happens when that algebra is hidden inside a word problem about physics or economics? This is where many students stumble, not because they don't know the material, but because they haven't practiced connecting it. So we must ask ourselves if there is a better way, a way that builds lasting understanding and confidence, a way that prepares you for the style of thinking required on test day, not just the content. The goal should not be to just cram information into your short-term memory. The goal should be to build a strong, interconnected web of knowledge. This web is what allows you to see patterns, make logical leaps, and solve unfamiliar problems with ease. It's time to move beyond simple memorization and embrace a more powerful method of learning. True mastery comes from understanding the big picture, not just memorizing the individual pixels. There is a more effective approach, and it's called syntopic learning. This might sound like a complicated term, but the idea behind it is simple and powerful. Instead of learning subjects in isolation, you actively seek out connections between them. You study a single topic by looking at it from multiple angles using different resources. Syntopic learning is about having a conversation with the material. You are not just a passive receiver of information, you become an active synthesizer of ideas. This method transforms studying from a chore of memorization into an exciting journey of discovery, building a deep and flexible understanding that lasts. Think of it like being a detective. A detective doesn't just look at one piece of evidence and make a conclusion. They gather clues from many sources, witness interviews, forensic reports, and security footage. They then piece all of this information together to see the whole story. Syntopic learning asks you to do the same with your studies. When you learn about a concept like rate of change, you don't just study it in your math textbook. You look for it in a science context, like the rate of a chemical reaction. You might even find it in a social studies passage discussing population growth. This creates a much richer and more memorable understanding of the core idea. The reason this works so well for tests like the SAT, GRE, and MCAT is that it mirrors how these exams are designed. They are built to test your ability to think across disciplines. A reading passage on the SAT might discuss a scientific discovery, requiring you to use both reading comprehension and analytical reasoning skills. The GRE's quantitative reasoning section often presents math problems in real-world contexts. By practicing syntopic learning, you are essentially training for the main event. You are building the mental muscles needed to see these connections quickly and accurately under pressure, which is the key to unlocking a top score. This approach is fundamentally different from last-minute cramming. Cramming is a short-term strategy that relies on repetition. Syntopic learning is a long-term strategy that relies on integration. The knowledge you gain is not easily forgotten after the test is over. It becomes a part of your intellectual framework. This deeper understanding reduces test anxiety because you feel prepared for anything, not just the specific problems you practiced. You walk into the exam room with the confidence that you don't just know the facts, you truly understand the concepts behind them. Getting started with syntopic learning is easier than you might think. The first step is to create a master map of the exam you are preparing for. Don't just list the subjects like math or verbal, break them down into core concepts and skills. For the SAT, your map might include topics like linear equations, evidence-based reading, and rhetorical analysis. For the MCAT, it would include enzyme kinetics, sociological theories, and organic chemistry reactions. This map acts as your blueprint. It shows you all the pieces of the puzzle you need to assemble, giving you a clear view of the entire landscape you need to conquer before test day. Next, you need to cross-train your brain. This means that for any single topic on your map, you should consult multiple sources. Let's say you're studying probability for the GRE. Start with your main prep book to learn the basics. Then, watch a Khan Academy video that explains the concept in a different way. After that, find a chapter in a college-level statistics textbook that goes into more detail. You could even read an article about how probability is used in sports or finance. By engaging with different explanations and examples, you force your brain to build a more robust and flexible understanding of the core idea, rather than just memorizing one specific formula. As you practice, shift your focus from chapter-based drills to theme-based problem sets. Instead of doing all the questions from Chapter 5, create your own custom practice sets. For one session, you could gather all the questions you can find related to rates and ratios, pulling them from math, science, and even reading passage sections. Another day, you might focus on questions that require you to interpret data from graphs and tables, regardless of the subject. This method trains you to recognize underlying patterns. You begin to see how the same skill is tested in different formats, which is exactly what you need for the real exam. Finally, you must keep a synthesis journal. This is not just a notebook for taking notes, it's a space for active thinking. After studying a topic from multiple sources, write a short summary in your own words. Don't just copy definitions, explain the concept as if you were teaching it to someone else. Then, below your summary, write down questions that arise. For example, how is this different from what I learned before? Or where else might I see this concept appear? This journal is your personal record of how your understanding is evolving and helps you become a more curious and engaged learner. To make your studying even more efficient, you can strategically pair different tests or sections that share common skills. The SAT and GRE, for example, have very similar verbal reasoning sections. Both require you to analyze arguments, understand vocabulary in context, and comprehend dense passages. If you are planning to take both tests, you can study for them at the same time. The practice you do for SAT reading comprehension directly helps you with GRE verbal reasoning. Similarly, the quantitative sections of the GRE and GMAT test many of the same core math concepts, like algebra, geometry, and data analysis. Studying them together reinforces your skills more effectively. Even within a single test like the MCAT, you can find smart pairings. The critical analysis and reasoning skills, or CARS section, is all about deconstructing arguments and understanding an author's point of view. This skill is also incredibly useful for understanding the complex scientific passages in the other sections. When you practice for CARS, you are also training yourself to be a better reader of scientific literature. You can pair your CARS practice with reviewing passages from the Biological and Biochemical Foundations section. This way, you are simultaneously improving your reading skills and reinforcing your science knowledge, making your study time twice as productive. A crucial part of the Syntopic process is the weekly mini retrospective. At the end of each week, take 30 minutes to look back at your synthesis journal and your practice sets. Don't focus on your score. Instead, look for patterns. Ask yourself, what types of questions did I struggle with across all subjects this week? Or did I see the concept of equilibrium show up in both my chemistry and economics practice? This reflection is where the deep learning happens. It helps you connect the dots and see the bigger picture. You start to understand the test maker's habits and the fundamental principles that unite different topics. This weekly reflection is your chance to adjust your strategy. If you notice you are consistently struggling with questions that require you to infer an author's intent, you know you need to dedicate more time to that specific skill next week. You can then actively look for this theme in all your practice materials. This process of reflection and adaptation turns your studying from a random walk into a targeted mission. You are no longer just covering material, You are actively diagnosing your weaknesses and systematically turning them into strengths, building a solid foundation for success. To support your Syntopic journey, you can use a few simple but powerful tools. Instead of just a long to-do list, create a concept tracker. This can be a simple spreadsheet or a document where you list all the key topics from your master map. For each concept, you can have columns for different resources you've used, like prep book, online video, or practice set, and a column for your confidence level. This visual tracker helps you see where you have strong, multi-source knowledge and where you need to do more cross-training. It ensures you don't accidentally skip over important connections and provides a clear overview of your progress. You should also rethink your flashcards. Instead of having a term on one side and a definition on the other, create synthesis flashcards. On the front, write a core concept like correlation versus causation. On the back, don't write a definition. Instead, write down 3 different examples of how this concept appears across different subjects. For instance, you could list a psychology study, a data interpretation graph from a science passage, and a flawed argument from a reading comprehension question. This format forces you to recall connections, not just isolated facts, making your review sessions far more effective for building long-term memory. Another great tool is a themed problem log. When you review your practice tests, don't just mark questions as right or wrong, categorize them by the underlying skill being tested. You might have categories like identifying assumptions, percentage change calculations, or applying a formula. Over time, this log will reveal your true strengths and weaknesses at a skill level rather than a topic level. You might find that you are great at chemistry, but struggle whenever a question involves interpreting a graph, no matter the subject. This insight is invaluable and allows you to do highly targeted practice to fix the root cause of your errors. Ultimately, Syntopic learning is about a fundamental shift in mindset. It's a move away from the brute force approach of memorizing endless facts and toward the elegant strategy of understanding core principles. Success on these challenging exams is not about knowing more than everyone else. It's about being able to use what you know more flexibly. By focusing on building connections, seeking out patterns, and reflecting on the big picture, you're learning to think like the test makers. This is how you learn smarter, not just harder. You build a foundation of knowledge that is not only powerful enough to ace your exam, but will also serve you well in your future academic and professional life.